She consults her notes and comes up with the next question, probably meant as an icebreaker. What's your most embarrassing moment as a teacher? Or don't you have one? Well, I had a guy once who was totally stuck in the mud. Nowhere close to anything interesting, just wallowing in the details of his life. Family problems, money problems, health problems, and so forth. Couldn't get out of it, couldn't get above it. I wanted to encourage him to try to adopt a larger overview, a broader context within which to view his existence. So I told him to pretend that he just found out he was going to die tomorrow, and then look at all these problems in that light. That sounds very effective. I could see where that might put someone's day-to-day concerns into perspective. Yeah, I respond somewhat sheepishly. So could Billy Jack. She bursts into laughter. Really? You got it from a Billy Jack movie? Yeah. I saw it when I was like 10, and the thing about dying tomorrow was probably my first profoundly moving insight. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the advice, but I regretted it as soon as I said it. I was afraid I'd be exposed as a fraud who just went around repeating kung fu movie wisdom. What was your second profoundly moving insight? I don't know. Probably the cogito. Cogito ergo sum. I spent a lot of time with that one. Years, really. If a tree falls in a forest and all that. All that? You mean the Zen koan? If a tree falls in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a noise? That's the one. What does that have to do with I think, therefore I am? Well, they're basically the same solipsistic thing. The tree in the forest thing isn't a koan, because it has a very specific answer. Which is, yes. Oh, well, I'm sure 100 generations of our best thinkers will be grateful. I laugh. The answer is yes, because the question says so. The question establishes that the tree and the forest are known to exist without being seen. So it naturally follows that any sound therein exists without being heard. It sounds like you found a loophole in the question, more like a wormhole into a deeper question. What do we know for sure? That's the real question. That's what the cogito is. That's what solipsism is. This isn't theory. This isn't belief or faith. This is the basic fact of existence. It's all about figuring out exactly what we know for certain as opposed to everything else. It's truly amazing that something so glaringly obvious and irrefutable is so universally ignored by science and philosophy and religion. And that is that we don't know anything, can't know anything. Can you define anything? Solipsism is defined as the belief that the only thing you can know for sure is that you exist, and that any other true knowledge is impossible. But, like I say, it's not really a belief. It's just the way it is. So I know I'm sitting here, but no. You know that you are. Body, planet, space, time, people, everything else is taken on faith. So I'm not sitting here. No, you don't know that either. All this doesn't mean that what seems to be isn't, just that it's unverifiable. You could say that it's highly likely that you're sitting here, but that's not true either. There's no particular likelihood whatsoever that your perception of reality has any basis in reality. Damn, that's a little freaky. You're not the usual spiritual teacher talking about higher states of consciousness and deeper states of love, I see. No, I don't go there. I'm more a truth guy. Your magazine doesn't cover this stuff a lot? Not really. We usually cover ascended masters and channeled entities and prophecy and yoga and all that stuff. And Tantra. Oh, yes, she laughs. Tantra sells magazines. Well, we've touched on right action, solipsism, Bhakti Yoga, Soneya style, and Billy Jack, I say. What's next? I ask when the storm settles down a bit. Okay, she says, referring to her notes and then leaning into the microphone at my collar to speak. You are enlightened, but you obviously have an ego. Isn't that a contradiction? Doesn't the ego have to be annihilated to achieve nirvana? Ooh, I coo appreciatively. Good question. Both are true. Yes, I have an ego, and it looks similar to the one I dropped to, as you say, achieve nirvana. But then I came back all enlightened and everything, and I needed something to wear. I look around, and there's my discarded ego lying in a pile on the floor, so I slip into it, and here I am. This is something a lot of students and seekers get hung up on, and there's really no satisfactory answer except to say, come see for yourself. Ramana Maharishi addressed this point this way. The I casts off the illusion of I, and yet remains as I. Such is the paradox of self-realization. The realized do not see any contradiction in it. The unrealized, though, do see a contradiction, but frankly, the unrealized see a lot of things that aren't there. I continue answering Julie's question. You've probably heard the saying, before enlightenment, a mountain is a mountain. During enlightenment, a mountain is not a mountain. And after enlightenment, a mountain is a mountain again. Well, it's like that. Before enlightenment, I believed my ego was me. Then enlightenment comes along and no more ego, only the underlying reality. Now it's after enlightenment, and this ego might be slightly uncomfortable or ill-fitting at times, but it's all I've got. The idea that your ego is destroyed in the process of becoming enlightened is roughly correct, but it's not complete. Before enlightenment, you're a human being in the world, just like everyone you see. During enlightenment, you realize the human being you thought you were is just a character in a play, and that the world you thought you were in is just a stage. So you go through a process of radical deconstruction of your character to see what's left when it's gone. The result isn't enlightened self or true self, it's no self. When it's all over, it's time to be a human being in the world again, and that means slipping back into a costume and getting back on stage. But now you know? Sure, because now you're actually in the audience, watching the drama. I could never mistake the play for reality again, or my character for my true state. Happily, I never know what my character is going to do or say until he does it or says it, so the whole thing stays interesting. There still seems to be a lot of contradictions. First, we can't know anything. It's all contradictions. Whitman said, "Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes." He was addressing the inherent problems of discussing this stuff. As far as not being able to know anything, that's just a starting point of inquiry, like taking stock of your gear before beginning a long hike. If you're going on a voyage of self-discovery, you'd want to start by saying, okay, what do I know for a fact? What is absolutely certain? And that's what the cogito is. I wish we could start a fire. Huh? A fire? Yeah, right here on the terrace. A small bonfire, a bottle of wine, the storm. It's really a delightful moment. I feel like we're wasting it with all this talk. So we sit quietly and watch the storm for a while. Julie is a good storm watcher. You can tell good storm watchers because they're lucky. Without any conscious effort, they're always looking in the right place at the right time. They don't have to snap their heads around and say, "Oh, I missed that great bolt of lightning," because they were looking right there when it happened. Jane Roberts said that miracles are nature unimpeded. which is a good way of saying that if you take your hand off the tiller, the boat will steer itself and do a vastly better job of it than you ever could. Julie seems to have that ability to relax into the moment and let the universe do the driving. If there were a secret to happiness in life, I'd say that was it. The storm abates, and we decide that all of our good interview work has earned us a meal. She wants her magazine to pay, but I ask nicely if I can buy, and she says yes. With me pushing my bike, we cross over the swollen and muddy river and make our way to the heart of town, where there are several good restaurants to choose from. "Can we continue the interview?" she asks. "Sure," I say. "Can we go back to where we started for a minute and talk about right action?" "Sure." You hear the term right action used a lot in spiritual circles. It's one of the steps on Buddhism's Eightfold Path, but I don't think you mean rules of abstinence. Right action always sounds like a term for some higher, heart-centered morality, but you make it sound very specific and, I guess, not so moral. If it would allow you to murder someone. Do you know what agape is? Yes, it's like the highest form of love, divine love. Yeah, that's what everyone thinks, but it's not really. It's one of those things you can't understand until you have the direct experience of it. Love as we know it is like a shadow of agape, like the candlelight flickering on the wall, and not the flame itself. It's a very different thing at its source. But love is the closest representation of agape available, so that's what it gets translated as. Right action is the same deal. Morality is just a shadow of right action. Right action isn't the highest degree of morality any more than agape is the highest degree of love. When you understand and are able to act from right action, morality is no longer necessary. It's instantly obsolete and discarded. This is at the heart of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, as a moral creature, throws down his weapon and refuses to launch a war. Krishna converts him to a creature of right action by freeing him from delusion, and Arjuna takes up his weapon and launches the war. Right action has nothing to do with right or wrong, good or evil, naughty or nice. It is without altruism or compassion. Morality is the set of rules and regulations that you use to navigate through life when you're still trying to steer your ship, rather than let it follow the flow. No shit? I laugh. No shit. The Tao says, when the great Tao is forgotten, kindness and morality arise. That's what it means. No shit? You kiss your mother with that mouth? So, like, your character's up on the stage, and he's fulfilling his role. He sees the future flowing towards him, and he moves with it. He's not stopping to consult someone's book of rules. So if the flow tells you to launch a war, sure, you launch a war. She pauses to ponder. I think I'm like that at times, in the flow, but not always, not in big things. I think I'd be scared to set my morality aside. That's perfectly natural. It's a trust you develop a little at a time as you learn to relinquish the illusion of control. Is that what people like Sanaya or, devoutly religious people are doing? Very much so. Basically, the act of faith in something other than self allows you to release the tiller, to surrender. Whatever the reason for doing it, whatever name you give to the new steering agent or agency, it's going to be a very positive change because it's going to be the infinite and unerring intelligence of the universe that takes over. So, like born-again Christians? Right. They have abandoned the illusion of control. It doesn't matter why you do it, just that you do it. This is the point of distinction and the root teaching of all major religions.